The Rangers roster has been so snake-bitten by injuries. It's time to take a look back on the IL and say, who the heck is even on this team when they get fully healthy? We'll talk about all that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the World Series champion Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, before we get into looking at the ideal version of this roster, remembering the many, many men who are sitting on the IL, today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Now, the Rangers have an off day today as I am recording this. They have gotten some pretty positive news on the two of the biggest injured list guys that are out there right now in Josh Jung and in Max Scherzer in this past weekend. And so I think it's time to just take a look back and remember who all's on this IL. Not just for the sake of remembering, wow, this is how incredibly battered this team has been with injuries, but just for the sake of being optimistic and envisioning what this team might look like down the stretch in a playoff chase if, and I mean the biggest of ifs, everyone is healthy. Now, I don't expect that literally everybody is going to be healthy. I said the Rangers have been snake bitten by injuries, but it's not just a snake bite. It's not just, a crocodile bite. It is like a T-Rex sized bite into this Rangers roster that they have suffered with these injuries. So just remembering who all is actually employed by the Texas Rangers, whether they are playing or not. Mostly just this injured list is littered with many, many good pitchers. So I want to start with the starting rotation. Now, in case you forgot, which you might have because it's been a hot minute since he's pitched, Jacob deGrom is indeed a Texas Ranger. And when that man is on the hill, he is the best pitcher in baseball. Now, again, it's always the if. It's always the when he's on the hill. It's always the when he's not hurt, he's the best pitcher in baseball. And unfortunately for his Rangers tenure, it has been just filled with injuries. Not just the elbow surgery that he underwent last year. It was also leading up into camp. It felt like every single day of Rangers spring training was, all right, when is Jacob deGrom going to pitch? How much is he going to pitch? How much of a limit is his pitch count on? What new injury hell is he in today? It was just the entirety of spring training and the entirety of last season until he had elbow UCL repair surgery that knocked him out for the entirety of last year outside of those 6 starts and the vast majority of this year. But again, I'm not too worried about when Jacob deGrom eventually comes back. We'll see if it ends up being in August like the target date is set at right now and has been set since the surgery last June. But I don't see a version of Jacob deGrom coming back and being mid or bad. He's just been absolutely sensational every time he's stepped on the hill for the last, 7 seasons, basically his entire career. And so I don't envision a world where he comes back and he's just a different version of Jacob deGrom. I think that's possible, but I just don't really think that it's likely. So if Jacob deGrom is healthy, if he is starting, which I don't see why you would bring him back to be a reliever, that's just not something you do for a guy who you're paying, I think, $40 million this year. He is going to be your number one, your ace. And if you make the playoffs, which at this point is pretty decent size if, he is going to be your game one starter. And number 2 in this rotation, there are some other guys who have been dominant this year. There is another multi-time Cy Young winner on this roster that is currently on the IL and rehabbing with Round Rock. But no, I think Nathan Eovaldi has earned the right to be the Rangers' number 2, and if Jacob deGrom does not come back this year, then they're number 1. We saw how great Nathan Eovaldi has been since he's come off the IL. He worked on some tweaks on his mechanics. He's gained some more velocity in his fastball. That splitter is absolutely nasty. He is absolutely disgusting in big games. There is literally no one on this roster that I want more pitching in a big game with stakes on the line than Nathan Eovaldi. That includes Jacob deGrom. That includes Max Scherzer. That includes everybody else on this roster, because it includes almost everybody in the entirety of Major League Baseball. I mean, sure, if Garrett Cole is healthy, then it feels kind of ridiculous to say, oh, I'd want Nathan Eovaldi over him. But in a big game, Nathan Eovaldi has been that dude for the entirety of his career, and we literally just saw it in such amazing fashion in the postseason to win the Rangers their first ever World Series. It's big game Nate for a reason. Now, the number 3 in this fully healthy, actualized version of this rotation, I'm going with Max Scherzer. I think Scherzer would be the Rangers' Game 3 starter if, and a big old country-sized if, everybody's healthy. I absolutely love Max Scherzer, and I think that he is going to play a big role in this team moving forward. Now, granted, I thought the Rangers would be hurting in the rotation much more for him to join the rotation and finally get healthy. I mean, the fact that he progressed so quickly the first time through his injury rehab until that setback with his thumb and the nerve issue, I thought they would really, really need Max Scherzer back in this rotation as fast as possible, but that hasn't been the case. The rotation has not been the problem all year long, not even the depth of this rotation, even when they're calling up guys like Jose Urena to be a full-time starter. He is absolutely fit the bill. When you're asking for quality starts from Andrew Heaney, he has fit the bill. Same with Dane Dunning. Same with Michael Lorenzen as well. But Max Scherzer has still got it. I know he's a little bit older. I know that he is not only coming back from one of the first major surgeries, if not, I believe the first major surgery of his career. He is still, I think, as good as anybody. We just saw it in his last rehab start. You know the kind of competitor that Max Scherzer is and the kind of competitor that he can be. And last year, his main issue was with the home run ball. And, well, with the baseballs deadened this year, clearly deadened, not carrying as far, I don't think Max Scherzer is going to have too many problems this year. His slider looked much better than it did with the Mets, and people just kind of underestimated what he was doing down the stretch for that Rangers team that desperately needed every single one of the starts that Max Scherzer gave him. He was not great in the playoffs, but good enough. He even had 3 shutout innings in Game 3 of the World Series, which the Rangers desperately needed from him. Left that game due to an injury, but still, those 3 innings were massive. That was an incredibly close game, and those were 3 huge innings because that series was still tied, and that whole game, Game 3, was incredibly close, and the Rangers don't win it without those 3 shutout innings from Max Scherzer. And I think Max Scherzer is going to play a big role on this team moving forward as their number 3. Maybe he'll be their number 2 until Jacob deGrom gets back and healthy, which hopefully again happens in August. Hopefully we can get Max Scherzer back and healthy and on the mound in a Rangers uniform sooner as opposed to later. He is going to need to be built up to 75 pitches before the Rangers reevaluate and see if he is going to be ready to start on the hill for a major league game as opposed to just with the Chippewa Club. But I am really excited, and I still am a big believer in Max Scherzer that he is absolutely not yet washed and hopefully won't be, at least for the rest of this season. Now, number 4 in this Rangers rotation, if everybody is fully healthy, I think it's got to be Jon Gray. Jon Gray has been absolutely massive for this club. 59 1/3 innings in 10 starts, 12 games overall, a 2.12 ERA. The man has been downright electrifying this year. He's been fantastic. He's been maybe even better than Nathan Eovaldi. Cumulatively on the year, his stats say he's just a little bit better than Nathan Eovaldi, and the Rangers definitely missed him when he was on the IL with that groin strain. but he is back now. He is in this rotation. He is tentatively scheduled to start for Wednesday. And if you roll into a playoff series where your number 4 starter is John Gray, and not just regular old John Gray, this version of John Gray, the nasty destroyer of worlds John Gray, man, that is going to be a dangerous, dangerous team. But again, the Rangers had to get there to the playoffs, stick around while the rest of these arms get healthy. And the number 5 arm in this rotation, if everybody is healthy, I think I would have to go with Tyler Mahle. We'll see what he looks like when he comes back from his Thomas Johnson surgery, which was actually not TJ surgery, which was just a different kind of UCL repair surgery. But he has faced live hitters. He is throwing bullpens. We'll see when he eventually gets to that rehab assignment. But the goal is late July for him to return to this rotation. And the reason I give him the nod over the other starters in this rotation is that the other guys that are in this rotation right now have experience coming out of the bullpen more recently and more effectively than Tyler Mahle does. Mahle has been a starter for basically his entire major league career. Now, if his rehab takes him a little bit longer than coming back in July, or maybe he has a setback and doesn't end up coming back this year, we'll see what happens then. But I think that bringing him back and putting him into a different routine would be difficult for him and maybe dangerous in possibly having some kind of setback if you're not getting him back in there into the rhythm, into the repetitions that he has done for the entirety of his major league career. I think that would be not great for him, although it could just be that the Rangers get to a point where they have enough starting pitchers that are doing so well that Mahle can't crack the rotation because it's a skill issue. And there's so many other good starting pitchers. Coming up, we're going to look at this lineup, what it will look like when healthy, and most importantly, is Josh Smith an everyday player when all the bats get healthy? I'm talking about that and more right after this word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Ibotta. Spring is here, and it's out with the old and in with the new. But don't splurge on anything new without getting cash back in return when you use Ibotta. Ibotta is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time when you shop on hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies to toys, so you can make sure that you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, the flight you've been eyeing, or that fancy dinner that you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't really amount to much. But with Ibotta, just add your offers in the app, upload your receipts, you can get real cash that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 for just trying the Ibotta app using code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. This episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. With PrizePicks, you can turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a PrizePicks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections, and you are locked in. Looking for promotions, PrizePicks has got you covered every week, from lowering the select players' stats projections on Tuesdays, which increases your chance of getting a win, to getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. You can now win up to 100 times your money with baseball-only lineups on PrizePicks. If you submit a winning lineup featuring 4 Demon Squares, you'll cash in big time on the biggest moments of baseball's early season. I made my first $10 deposit and received an instant $10 bonus. If you've got the skills, you can play for a shot of turning your $10 into $1,000. So download the app today, use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the PrizePicks app today, use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Now, stop me if you've heard this before. Okay, you've probably definitely heard this before. The Rangers' offense has been a little bit of a problem this year. But one part of it that has not been a problem, has been far from a problem, is Josh freaking Smith. Now, the question that lingers while these Rangers bats sit on the IL, mainly Josh Jung, and also a little bit Evan Carter, and maybe even a little bit Justin Foscue, is what's going to happen with Josh Smith whenever Josh Jung comes back. Josh Smith is playing at an all-star level this year. He has been absolutely fantastic. He's been pretty clearly the Rangers' second best bat this year, only to Corey Seager. If you're second to Corey Seager as the best hitter on a team, then you're still probably a pretty darn good hitter. Now, that hasn't as much been about Josh Smith being amazing, which he has been. It's also a little bit been about the rest of this offense not really stacking up. And Josh Jung was absolutely incredible for the first 4 games of the season that he played in. Still has a 14-15 OPS on the season, but again, just 4 games played. That stupid pitch by Phil Maton that came in and broke his wrist really just shattered not only his wrist, not only my heart, but also the Rangers' offense. It feels like for the last 2 years, when Josh Jung has been on the IL, this offense has just gone in the stinker. Last year down the stretch when Josh Jung was out of the lineup with that broken thumb, I mean, it's just been these random one-off injuries that have happened with him. I mean, if you're going to call him injury-prone, you would be injury-prone too if you got hit in the thumb with a 109-mile-an-hour line drive. And you'd also be injury-prone if you got hit in the wrist with the baseball on a check swing, a fastball, no less. It's just freak injuries that have been horribly timed for Mr. Josh Jung, and have just really, this lineup has not been quite the same without him. But the question is, when everybody's healthy, Josh Smith has been the second best hitter in this lineup, but where does he go? Where does he earn his playing time? Because if Evan Carter gets back and is healthy and is hitting like the Evan Carter that we saw more of last year than we saw this year, maybe not, the 1,000 OPS, but surely a little bit better than what he did in the month of May when he was clearly fighting through that injury. I mean, in the month of April, he was significantly better. A 776 OPS, that's plenty good enough to be an everyday player. But in May, the 382 OPS, not quite going to cut it. Maybe Evan Carter, before he gets fully back and fully healthy, will spend some time in AAA. Maybe we'll have an extended rehab assignment to make sure that he is fully healthy, and also just get him some more plate appearances against worse pitchers than the guys who are in the major leagues right now, just to get him some confidence back in that bat, because it has been a little bit rough. But if you look at this lineup, that you got to find somewhere for Josh Smith. Maybe that's in left field. Maybe that's at first base. Whether it's Josh Jung or Josh Jung moving to first base, which I don't think will be the case. There was a time as recently as early last year where I would have said, yeah, Josh Smith is definitely a defensive upgrade over Josh Jung. And it's not to say that Josh Smith is not a good defender at third base. It's more a nod to the work that Josh Jung did on his defense last year to be one of the better defensive third basemen in the American League, to the point where I was downright aggrieved that he wasn't at least a finalist for the Gold Glove, because he was just that special defensively. But maybe Jung or Smith spend some time at first base, because it's been a little bit of a rough offensive season for Nathaniel Lowe, especially without those slugging numbers, which is something that he can do that limits that he has over Josh Smith. They both have elite on-base skills. Smith has been a little bit better of a power hitter this year. Actually, no, a lot better of a power hitter. 4 home runs for Smith so far this season, 15 doubles, and just 2 homers and 6 doubles for Nathaniel Lowe this year. That might be where Josh Smith gets some playing time. Or it might be left field, or it might be DH. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Wyatt Langford is really about to turn a corner. He has had multi-game hits, I believe, 4 times since he has returned from the IL. He is hitting the ball incredibly hard, and he is also incredibly fast, which Smith is pretty quick, but there are very few players in Major League Baseball that are as fast as Wyatt Langford. So I think that the DH route is probably going to go to Wyatt Langford. So I think either left field or first base is probably where we're going to see some time for Josh Smith. And now if everyone's healthy, I think that Justin Foscue might get a chance to crack this roster, but it would have to be between him and Ezekiel Duran. And I think Duran, with his defensive versatility, gets the nod there, because we've seen Zeke play some incredible defense. I mean, some of those throws that he's had at third base were just absolutely majestic. And I think offensively they're pretty close. Now, if Justin Foscue is absolutely crushing it and in his rehab assignment and just absolutely lighting the entire world on fire, he might end up getting that nod. Because we haven't seen nearly as much slugging from Ezekiel Duran this year. He's put together some quality at-bats. He's putting together some quality defense. He's been very fast on the base pass with which Justin Foscue is not and probably never will be. And that's fine because he's a very, very good hitter. And he can play a couple different places defensively, but doesn't quite have the defensive versatility of Ezekiel Duran. So I think if everybody is healthy, this roster looks pretty similar, but the only guys who are getting less time in the lineup might be a little bit less time for Evan Carter, might be a little bit less time for Nathaniel Lowe. But if Lowe starts slugging like we all know that he can, then it becomes a much more difficult proposition of where you work Josh Smith in as an everyday player. But it's more of a question of where and how you work him as an everyday player, not is he an everyday player, which was most definitely the question heading into this season. Coming up, we're going to look a little bit at this bullpen configuration. Do the Rangers have too many good options? It sounds like a question that might have been a heresy as recently as last year, but they just might. And we're going to talk about all that and more right after this word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and more. And you can bet on it all at FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. You can look at the Mavs odds right now to win the NBA Finals, and after a rough Game 2 and a rough Game 1, they are plus 640 to win the NBA Finals. If you are feeling confident in that, and you're also feeling confident in Luka Doncic bringing home the Finals MVP, he is at plus 650. Or if you're looking at Corey Seager, AL MVP odds to finally take home his first regular season MVP. He's got 2 of those World Series MVPs. Looking for a regular season MVP right now. He has the 7th best odds, according to FanDuel, at plus 5,500. So check it all out at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Now, let's look a little bit at this bullpen. There are still quite a few Rangers injured pitchers, and there's quite a few starters in the rotation right now that, if everybody gets healthy and it looks like the best version of themselves, that will probably end up in the pen. And looking at this whole roster, looking at the whole 40-man and everybody who is on the IL right now, there are going to be some tough decisions if everybody gets healthy. Spoiler alert, I don't think everybody's going to get healthy at the same time. I'm hoping that eventually everyone gets healthy and maybe stays healthy for the duration of forever. But that's just not the way baseball go. Eventually there are going to be some little injuries that pop up with someone down the road. And so this ideal version of the healthiest version of the Texas Rangers might not come to fruition this year. But I'm still being the optimist. On the optimist side, the Rangers had a nice offensive game on Sunday. Nathan Eovaldi looked great. And so they haven't lost today, Monday, as I'm recording this, and they can't. So I'm going to lean in to the optimist role and look at what this best version of this Rangers bullpen would look like. Now, obviously, the closer is going to be Kirby Yates. He has been fantastic this season. He has been one of the best relievers in all of baseball, and he has done absolutely nothing to lose that job as the closer. I was still a believer in Jose Leclerc winning and maintaining that closer job out of camp. But so far, Leclerc has an up and down season. I think he has been much better than the average fan gives him credit for. I think that outside of a couple of blow-ups, he's been very, very good. But Kirby Yates has been downright phenomenal. Like, back to the best version of Kirby Yates, who was the best reliever in all of baseball there for a little stretch. And he's had that in him. But he has not been healthy for basically 4 years. Pretty much since 2019, his best year ever. He has not been right since then. He looked decent last year, was still getting back to the fully healthiest version of himself, and the Rangers took a chance on him wisely. And for $4.5 million, I mean, that might be the biggest steal of the offseason, is getting him for that price and having him be this version of himself. Now, we've seen some blow-up outings from David Robertson this season, but for the most part, he's been very, very consistent. And I think he's probably going to stick as the Rangers' 8th inning guy if everybody's healthy. The Rangers have had to use him quite a bit and had to use him for more than one inning in a few too many scenarios than I would have liked, especially since he is an older guy. I mean, he's nearly 40. He's 39 now. He is a little bit on the older side, and that's fine. But having to use him this frequently and for this many outings that are an inning plus 2 innings, sometimes 2 1/3 innings, that's not ideal. So having more of these back end guys healthy and effective is going to make this team much more effective and keep everybody healthy for the long haul. Now for the 7th inning guy, I think it's probably going to be some combination of Josh Sborz and Jose Leclerc. If you have those 4, Yates, Robertson, Leclerc, and Sborz, as your high leverage guys, you have 4 of them. So if your starter is decent for 5 innings, and you've got a lead heading into that 6th inning, you got 4 guys that can each go 1 inning that you can trust more times than not to hold as little as a 1-run lead. Those guys have got it this year. Sborz, I'm feeling very confident in him coming back. He looked great when he was healthy this season. Didn't see him be healthy for that all that long, but we've seen stretches of amazing Josh Sborz. We know what it can look like. We also know that he can do it in the postseason when it matters most and be at his most effective in those outings, which was pretty darn fun to watch last year. Same with Jose Leclerc. Same with Kirby Yates, I'd say. And same with David Robertson. All these guys have got experience. They've got great stuff. And they've got the trust of their manager to come up in these big spots. Now, when you get behind these first 4, the ideal 4 of your high leverage guys, you start to get some more difficult options. I think Jacob Latz has done absolutely nothing to lose his spot here, and I think that he should stick in this pen for as long as the Rangers have room for him. The only reason that he would get sent down is because he's got options. That's literally the only reason. But Jacob Latz this year has been so much better than anyone anticipated. He absolutely earned that spot out of camp with a great spring, and he has done nothing to lose the spot as the Rangers' only lefty in the pen. And not just their only lefty, but the only guy who comes in high leverage situations who can be a lefty killer. Yates can be that a little bit, but he's their closer, so they're not bringing him in lefty-only specialist situations. Leclerc has got a pretty nice changeup, so he can maybe come in those situations as well. But after this, it gets to be really difficult because the Rangers, you got 5 spots here in your bullpen. Usually you only have about 8 spots in your pen, and there's still several starters here. There are still 4 starters here that I have not really talked about for this pen. Those guys are Dane Dunning, Andrew Heaney, Michael Lorenzen, and oh yeah, Cody Bradford, who is still a guy and who has been fantastic out of the bullpen. He's been fantastic as a starter this year. Would hopefully like to see him be a starter, especially with some of these guys taking a little bit longer to get off the IL, and then eventually you put Bradford back in the pen. We'll see when he ends up being ready. I'm thinking at some point in the month of June, but honestly have no idea. It has been such a weird timetable for Cody Bradford, and I think he might also have an option left as well. So maybe he ends up being sent down to the minors at some point this year because you have so many other options. Because the other guys that are here that are going to be in this crunch if everybody gets healthy. But again, we'll see if that happens or when that happens or if there isn't some new injury development. There's still other guys that I have not mentioned yet that are going to be on the cusp that you're going to have to make a decision about. Maybe even trade a guy away at the deadline because you've got too many arms. I don't think that will be the case. I think there will probably be some other unknown injury before any of these guys, all of these guys get back and healthy. Because I also haven't mentioned Jonathan Hernandez or Jose Urena or Brock Burke. None of those guys have options to be sent back down to the minors. And I don't know if you noticed this, but Jonathan Hernandez has been freaking amazing the last few outings. The stuff has always been there. It has always been nasty. He is a guy who can face off against lefties, against righties, gets a lot of ground balls, can get a lot of swing and miss, can also give you some length out of the pen, giving you multiple innings, being kind of a mop-up reliever if you need that, or coming in for one inning, throwing some of the nastiest sinkers you'll ever see, and getting out guys in high leverage. He's also got that in his bag. And not to mention Jose Urena, who has been downright fantastic for the Rangers this year. Forced into a starting role, coming out of camp as the Rangers' long man, and with so many injuries, at points being all the way up to the Rangers' number 3 starter, he has lived up to the billing. He has been so good for this Texas Rangers squad, and he has given them that depth, that length. And even when he was coming out of the pen, he was still really darn good as a long reliever. I mean, this guy has been so valuable for the Rangers this year. And not to mention Brock Burke, who as recently as a couple years ago was one of the nastiest lefty relievers in all of baseball. He's looked pretty darn good in his rehab assignments, but we'll see what the Rangers will have to do with him, what kind of choices they will make. I mean, right now, the guys that are in the pen that I don't anticipate sticking around for all that much longer, I mean, Jesus Tinoco has not been bad. He's been fine. He's been a guy doing the job the Rangers have asked him to do. Grant Anderson has gotten a few more high leverage outings than I would have thought, or honestly would have preferred if everybody was healthy, but he has done the job for sure. He's still got some minor league options, so I think he would probably be the first one to get sent down if one of these guys gets healthy and you have to shuffle things around in the bullpen and in the rotation. But, with Jesus Tinoco, he doesn't have options, I don't think. I'm pretty darn sure if the Rangers cut bait with him, they're going to have to DFA him and make some difficult decisions. But the fact that they've got this depth is the only reason they have survived the incredible, unbelievable slew of injuries that they have been dealing with all season. And I mean the biggest possible if, everybody gets healthy and everybody gets right, and this team finally starts looking like the Texas Rangers that we saw last year, this team could be even better than last year. But again, there are a lot of ifs to get to before we go there. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy World Series champion Texas Rangers baseball.